Hi everyone, I'm Brooke and I'm the founder of the Santa Barbara Blockchain Institute with a mission to provide Bitcoin lessons for everyone. I do have a longer presentation that I've done for local professionals in my area a number of times, but I thought it would be much more useful if I broke it up into pieces and presented it to you on YouTube. So I've done that, and this is the first of 10 lessons plus an introduction to myself and why I should be here talking to you. And I'm posting them onto YouTube. So, this first lesson, we're going to talk about money and tokens because although many people don't realize that Bitcoin is actually just a computer program, it has no physical or tangible form at all. The important part behind it rests with an understanding of money and tokens. But before we get too much into that, I'm going to go ahead and share with you my disclosures. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not investment advice. This is just an informational and educational lecture series. I'm not a programmer or a technical expert, so I try to stay out of the weeds and just keep the concepts easy to understand and light for everyone. And personally, I do hold digital assets, so I do have skin in the game. But let's move on. So, Bitcoin, as an overview, it was created to be a peer-to-peer electronic payment system, as some people know, and it was created during the Great Financial Crisis because somebody was very unhappy with the behaviors of the banks and the governments, as many of us were. So this was an idea of getting an electronic payment outside of the existing infrastructure. Now, this wasn't the first attempt at an electronic currency, but it was the only successful one to date, and it's been running ever since its release in 2009. But before we get into Bitcoin directly too far, we need to kind of talk about tokens and the history and the definition of money, because that was its first use case, has been its first successful use case, and that's really what got it rolling. So let's talk about tokens and money. First of all, what is a token? A token is really just a representation of something else. It can be real, or it can exist just in your mind, or it can take digital form. These days with our computer world, many things do. It can have value to others or not. Many people are familiar with the tokens that are issued at an amusement park. So they work for all kinds of stuff inside the park, but as soon as you leave the grounds, they're pretty much useless. But while you are in the park and you are in that universe, the token is basically represents your ability to take rides, to participate in games, sometimes even to get food and drink and so forth. Now, tokens are very useful to us. I used a token to communicate my feelings. I gave some pretty flowers to my wife as a demonstration of my love, and we do this all the time. I also several years ago offered her a token of a legal relationship, and fortunately she accepted it, worked, and now today we both wear tokens on our fingers of our legal relationship. So again, tokens can be many, many different things, and we use them all across our society already. So they shouldn't be anything that sort of scares people away, the idea of a token. I've made up a list of ones that I thought of just off the top of my head of what the tokens are and who the issuing party are, the issuers, and what we use them for. And so you can see everything from your driver's license as an identity token to the dollars you use as a medium of exchange to the title of your car as an ownership token. Even credit cards, interestingly, I see as tokens because they basically are representative of your future earnings and ability to pay back loans that you take via your credit. So we already use tokens in a great number of forms, and this idea shouldn't scare anybody away, the idea of a token, because they're everywhere, even in your own wallet. So let's talk about the value of tokens. Tokens are really valuable because they serve some sort of purpose for us. They are useful, and they're speedy and quick, and they're shortcuts to proving other things like nationality or ownership and things like that. But in every single case, a token is really valuable only because we all agree that it is, and so we covet it for its usefulness. So, a quick little mental exercise here. If for some reason humans had decided that gold was evil and you were going to go straight to hell if you touched it or had any association with it, it was just a no-go for human beings, would it have any value? Would we assign a price to it, even if it had some useful qualities like we know that it does? It doesn't rust, it's easy to meld, it conducts electricity nicely. My point is that probably not. Humans, if we thought something bad would happen to us if we used it, we would probably shun it, at least the vast majority of us. And so it really wouldn't have value to us. Value is a belief, it's a mental understanding, it's not necessarily an intrinsic quality. So, money also, aside from tokens, money is really also a concept, and in a way it's kind of alive, and its uses change as it evolves along with the people that use it. So most things, and we look back in history here, as you see Homer doing there carefully, most histories of money show us that money starts as some sort of store of value. We want to be able to preserve our work and our efforts today and use them sometime in the future. So it's a store of value across time is the first use of money. Then once enough people start agreeing to use something as a money, it becomes a medium of exchange. So its use actually evolves and it gains another use. As a medium of exchange, it becomes useful in marketplaces to act as an intermediary for goods that otherwise would have to be priced in every other good. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. So it becomes a medium of exchange, some unit of exchange. And then when everybody starts using this medium of exchange, we start to price everything in it and we start to judge everything by it. And that is its final use. It becomes a unit of account because basically everybody in the culture or civilization prices everything in this thing we call a money. So there's an evolution to money, but it's all really a part of what we believe and how we use it and how we agree to give it value. If you think about early human life, it was kind of very communal in nature. We lived in small groups and tribes, and pretty much everybody helped everyone do everything because survival itself was sort of difficult, and you really had to rely on your neighbors and your friends and your family to survive. Let alone, go to the store and get luxuries and stuff like that. So in these early civilizations, property was very much communal and everybody helped each other. There was no real reason to save anything because everybody kind of had the same stuff. There wasn't a lot of it and everybody sort of helped get it and shared it. So there was no real reason to save. So as human development then persisted through the years, we began to discover specialization, and the concepts, the ideas of earning and spending came along. We realized that people can act individually, and some people are better at some things than others, and they should concentrate their time, specialize on doing certain things that benefit everybody. And then you can understand you're going to need to sort of trade back and forth those specialties, those things that people came up with. So some people began to work separately from the communal needs, and then they could also reward or pay other people with their work product or spend it. Some people worked harder, and so they earned more stuff and they had more stuff to spend. But that's the very sort of basis of the ideas of monies. Now that we're each creating our own stuff, or at least to some degree, we need to sort of keep it valuable, whether you grew it or you collected it or you harvested it, you caught it, you made it, whatever these things that you crafted together, collected, or somehow came up with, you need to keep the value of your work today so that you could spend it tomorrow. Nobody wanted to fish all day and give away all the fish and then have nothing the next day. You wanted to preserve your efforts and labor. So the idea of a token of value is something that transfers your value across time so that you can spend it tomorrow. You put in good effort today and you want to be able to recoup it tomorrow if you can't eat or drink or use it all today. So civilization started using tokens of value of one form or another. And here are some examples of those. We know from the past we use cowrie shells. Islands in the Pacific used these giant stones that they had to mine and ferry across to their island, and then they carved ownership records on them. We used coins, of course, everybody's familiar with that. We used glass trade beads in Africa as tokens of value. And we also used these specialized sticks in some other cultures. So a wide variety of things, but the general idea is we imbued these tokens with the idea that they had value that could be used across time tomorrow. I can use this back. Now, two real good other reasons to want to have a store of value, something that preserves time, just not for just yourself to be able to use it tomorrow, but also you want to sort of to pass on value to your kids. Most parents have an inner urge to sort of leave things behind for their children to ensure that their DNA persists and that they're leaving a legacy. So passing on value necessarily means that it needs to cross time to the future. The other thing is that as we started to intermingle and sort of trade with each other, if you left your group or family and you wanted to go trade somewhere, well, the items, those things that you were trading, they needed to persist in time. Somehow you needed to keep that value. You didn't want to go and take care of business in another part of the world and then come home penniless. You needed to sort of preserve that value. So store of value allows you to conduct trade and preserve that value you've accrued over time, which I think makes sense to a lot of people. So the next phase, the next use of money, as I mentioned earlier, is a medium of exchange. And the reason why a medium of exchange evolves from just items that are stores of value is because stores of value are nice, but bartering for everything that you need is a really hard thing to do. For one thing, everything needs to be priced in everything else. If you think about it, you need to know how many oranges are worth a lemon, how many lemons are worth a seashell, how many seashells are worth something else made, a fur, for example. And so everything needs to be priced in everything, and it constantly gets repriced. That makes trade really difficult. It would be much easier if we could agree on a common commodity that could act as a go-between or a medium between all the various goods so that everything could just be priced in one item, such as a shell. Now we know what a day's work, how many shells a day's worth is worth, or how many oranges one shell would buy you, or how much, how many furs collected and skinned would be equal to one unit of the medium of exchange, such as a shell. So you can see having a medium of exchange makes trade much, much easier. And that's sort of the second use of a money after a store of value. So if you're going to use tokens as stores of value and as of mediums of exchange, they need to have kind of some certain qualities. For example, choosing bananas as a store of value may make you rich one day, but 3 days later, it's gone. So as an example, as a common sense example, tokens of value, stores of value need to be durable. They need to last. They need to not, disintegrate. They need to be durable to a certain degree. Another quality is they need to be portable. If you're going to take them and trade somewhere, you need to be able to take them with you. And lastly, they need to be divisible because it's really hard to trade a quarter of a cow. Obviously, it can be done, but only once. So you want things that can be divisible or come in small enough increments that you can use multiples of them for mediums of exchange. So those three things make absolutely common sense for a medium of exchange. Now, the other things that would be very useful is that you want the tokens to be identifiable. Like it's clearly that is what it seems to be. And so that's why you end up seeing faces on money so much. The governments that we work within are trying to make these monies very identifiable so that okay, this is actually the thing that I want. And in the early forms of money, such as the shells or the rocks, that was sort of self-evident. But as we moved away from those to more representational tokens, then we needed to make them identifiable. And the last word, the last characteristic that a money needed to be is fungible. And the fungibility is important because they need to be consistent, consistent enough to serve as good trade mediums. So if you take dollar bills, for example, none of our $2 bills are exactly identical. They have different signatures on them. They have different serial numbers. They're not identical, but they are fungible. Any $1 is exchangeable for any other $1. And so even these early monies like shells, they had to be consistent enough that any one shell is tradable for another shell. That way they can be used as medium of exchanges and not confuse the whole thing all over again. Governments like to make monies because then they can tax the people and they can get some little bit of spending money on their own. So that's why governments played a role in this also. So the last function of a money, the last use, it's gone from something that is suitable as a store of value, and it's moved on to be widespread enough to become a medium of exchange. And the last one is simply becoming a unit of account. As I said earlier, now everybody in my culture uses these shells for medium exchanges, so we can actually start to price everything in shells. And if I go to the market, you'll see how many shells everything costs me. That's a unit of account. And that is sort of the final use of money when it really has reached a stage in its maturity that it is widespread and commonly used. In the United States, we've had a stable government and the same currency or money for quite some time, 100 years or so now. So we're very used to our US dollars being able to fulfill all three functions of a money. And for us, although we only amount to 4% of the world's population, we know we can store value with dollars in our savings accounts, and we know that we buy and we sell everything in dollars. We use those as our medium of exchange. And everywhere we go in our country, everything is priced in dollars. That's our unit of account. In other countries, many countries actually worldwide, their local currency cannot be used for some of these things. Maybe they can't be used as a store of value, but they do use them as a medium of exchange. And maybe the unit of account is not consistent. It may be a number of different things. It makes life more difficult for them. We, with a very mature form of money, we in the United States are fortunate. So those are the basic characteristics of money. And those are also the way that money evolves into different uses. Now, when we consider this program, this digital money that somebody created about 12 years ago, we want to think back to those characteristics of money: durable, portable, divisible, identifiable, and fungible. And it just so happens that Bitcoin, well, as it was designed, it does a really good job of all of these things. It persists because it lives on a network of computers around the world. It's extraordinarily portable. It's digital. It trades 24/7. It's very, very, very divisible, much more so than our dollar. It's identifiable, and it has ways of proving that it is what it says, even online, and we'll talk about that a little later also. And it's fungible. Any one Bitcoin is the same as any other Bitcoin. So it does a really good job of meeting these characteristics. Now, in the next section, we'll talk about ledgers and trust, because there's one more characteristic of money that is extraordinarily important, maybe the most important part, and that has to do also with how we keep track of it and how we trust the folks that are keeping it for us. So that'll be lesson 2. I look forward to seeing you there. If you have any questions, again, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'd love to grow our network. Thanks.